Welcome to a new episode of the 90s Metal Gamer, where we stay hydrated and play video games. I'm all about having complete transparency on this channel, and I really wanted to jump on the Metroid Prime Remastered train so bad, but I wasn't able to find the physical copy anywhere. And if you know me, I like my physical copy games more than I do digital copies. By the time I was able to get my hands on the hard copy of Metroid Prime for the Switch, it was already too late. I had already beaten Metroid Prime for the GameCube, and that's okay. So for this video, I'm going to go through a casual review of how I feel about Metroid Prime for the GameCube. And if I'm going to have complete transparency with you guys, I have to say that I used an action replay to beat this game. I had unlimited health, unlimited missiles, unlimited bombs. Let's get started.
And then the Lord said,
I want to see your tiny head.
Confession time. I really do not know a whole lot of the lore that surrounds Metroid. But what I do know is that you play a character named Samus Aran. Samus Aran. However it's pronounced, you play as her. And you are just an all-around badass. The very first Metroid game that I ever played was Metroid Fusion on the GBA. After that, I played Metroid Zero Mission, also on the GBA. And from what I understand, Metroid Zero Mission is just a remastered version of OG Metroid. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. The next one I played was Metroid Samus Returns on the 3DS. And I don't think I ever beat that one. The Metroid series is known for being stupid difficult. And Metroid Prime is no different. For this review, I'm going to go over the story, the gameplay, the graphics, and the music. Let's get started. The Metroid series follows the steps of the Legend of Zelda series. Not in a sense that you're saving the princess or anything like that, meaning that the order of the release of the games is not the order in which they should be played. According to the Metroid fandom page, this is the timeline. By order of release, Metroid Prime is the 5th installment of the Metroid series, just one day after Metroid Fusion was released for the GBA. Metroid Fusion was November 17th, 2002, while Metroid Prime was November 18th, 2002. I'm pretty sure Nintendo had some kind of strategy associated with this, but I don't know exactly what that is. But according to the Metroid Prime fandom page, this game takes place after Metroid Zero Mission, or OG Metroid, whichever one you want. They're both the same game. Samus's original mission was to respond to a distress signal coming from the space pirate frigate Orpheon. Upon her arrival, she notices that the pirates have been killed by their own people. But these aren't exactly their own people though. At least not in a conventional sense. They have been experimented on with some radioactive material called Phazon. She runs into the Parasite Queen upon her investigation of Orpheon. After defeating the Parasite Queen, the explosion that follows nerfs her of all her abilities, like any typical Metroid game. And to make matters worse, as she's trying to escape the explosion, she runs into Meta Ridley. she lands in an area called the Talon Overworld, and thus begins the journey of Metroid Prime. You will be using the map a lot during your gameplay, and I did not realize that it would be such an important asset until about halfway through the game. It is literally your best friend. Get used to using it a lot if you're going to play this game again. Okay, we all know this is a first-person shooter game, but get this. Because Nintendo is Nintendo, they wanted to call it a first-person adventure game, because of all the exploration that you do and collectibles that you pick up and whatnot. I mean, technically Nintendo isn't wrong, but Nintendo is just being Nintendo, and they're gonna do things the way they want. Regardless. I mean, that's part of the reason why Breath of the Wild is still $60. And why Tears of the Kingdom is gonna be $70. I honestly shouldn't be talking about that right now because I actually pre-ordered it. Throughout your gameplay, you'll pick up all of the items that you lost in the initial explosion, plus some cool neat extras. You'll get your morph ball transformation, you'll have your wave beam, you'll have your missiles, you'll have your standard power beam, you'll have your ice beam, and your plasma beam. And at the very end of it all, you'll even get your phazon beam, which I think is really, really cool. The controls, for me, had a very steep learning curve. It wasn't like your typical first-person shooter controls. You didn't strafe with one thumbstick and then move your direction in another thumbstick. If you wanted to strafe, you would hit the L trigger, and that would strafe you. And R trigger was the manual aim. It was actually quite funny when I was trying to learn the controls because I thought I had stupid hands. And I probably do, but that's not the point. I just think the controls were difficult. Up until the very end of the game, I feel like I did not master the controls whatsoever. I still had issues even when I was fighting Metroid Prime. There was a very short delay between the on-screen action and the button pressing, but I think it's because I used an extension cord for my GameCube controller. The GameCube controller cord is about 6.5 feet long, and with this extension cord, brings it up to about 12.5 feet. And also I want to say that my GameCube controller is fairly old, so that might have something to do with it. Overall, I'd have to say the gameplay was a really solid experience. Metroid Prime was the first ever 3D Metroid game, and Nintendo nailed it out of the park tremendously. Of course, by 2002 standards, we all thought, oh my god, how can we get any better than this? This looks so realistic. And when you compare it to Metroid Prime Remaster, you can tell that it has aged. But in my own humble opinion, I think it has aged well. I'm going to go off topic here for a little bit, but to me, 20 years ago was the 80s. I refuse to believe that 20 years ago is still in the 2000s, and this game is 21 years old, released in 2002. The overall theme that I get from Metroid Prime is dark. Not in terms of just the graphics and the color and whatnot, but also in the story as well. You get a feeling of isolation, feeling of desertion, fear of the unknown, what's going to happen next, this, that, and the other. You really feel like you have to look over your shoulder with every step that you make in the game, which I feel adds to the immersion of the gameplay. What am I doing? This segment is about the graphics. Why am I talking about the story still? Anyway, overall the graphics were absolutely beautiful. They aged well. Not really much I can say about that. Except that if you still have your GameCube and it's up and running, highly recommend you play Metroid Prime again. It is definitely worth it. The Metroid Prime overworld has different types of music for each of the areas that you'll visit. And if I say so myself, they all match perfectly. The song that's playing right now is my personal favorite out of the entire game. Let's have a listen for a little bit. For whatever reason, I get major Halo vibes from this. Something tells me that Nintendo gained inspiration from the Halo Combat Evolved game. Like I mentioned, each area has its own unique sound to it. Check this one out. To sum up the music in just a few words, the music amplified the overall gameplay experience. I thought it was magnificent in every single way. Nintendo got it right. Before I give the final water score on this game, I have to talk about the Metroid Prime boss fight. It is not for the faint of heart. Even with cheats activated, I had a hell of a time trying to figure out what to do, because there's a method to the madness if you want to beat him. Even after I figured out what I needed to do to win, finding the right opportunity to strike is where I had trouble. This isn't just with the Metroid Prime shell, this is also with the Metroid Prime core. I'll show some footage here in a second. Both of these boss fights are not to be taken lightly. I repeat, they are not to be taken lightly. Had I not been cheating, I would not have been able to beat this game. And for all those that will say, oh, you didn't beat the game because you used cheat codes, I do not care. I never claimed to be a professional gamer, and I will probably never be one. As a matter of fact, I know I will never be a professional gamer. I play my games to enjoy them. not to complete 100%. Which is why this is called a casual review video. Altogether, it took me about 18 to 19 hours to complete this game. And I had a lot of fun in doing so, which is why I give this game a solid 5 out of 5 bottles of water. Thanks for watching my video all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you found me. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I am a solo YouTuber, so everything that I do on this channel is done by me. And any little bit of support that I get will go a long way. I love y'all. Stay hydrated and stay tuned for my next video.